Okay, guys, so here's the basic deal. The Social Security Administration will never actually shut down. And here's why. A lot of people are freaked out because I keep seeing these things, and I put one up to go ahead and make a point, which is that there are all these different federal agencies, but there's only one federal agency that has its own purse. It's called your FICA taxes because they can go to the trust funds, which they're required by law to do as the Social Security Administration. They're required to continue to pay out benefits and do whatever means they need to. And they're allowed to borrow money directly from the trust funds as a result of that. So other agencies, they don't have that special trust fund trigger where they get to go ahead and pull money from those trust funds. So putting it really simply, the SSA technically should never run out until the trust funds become depleted, which, for the retirement trust fund is in like 10 years. So in like 10 years, the SSA as an agency could potentially face one of these government shutdowns and then not have the money to go ahead and pay for things. In that case, it could happen. They could shut down, but it will not shut down in the immediate sense because these congressional leaders, my apologies, I should have put this closer, because these congressional leaders have not figured out essentially what they want to do with funding. Now, what is the date that everybody is talking about right now? The date that everybody is talking about is October 1st, because the way it's supposed to work in any one of these little governing bodies, of course, this is the biggie, this is Congress, they have to pass what next year's budget is going to be for all these different agencies. Think of it this way. It's like a CEO executive with all of their accounting folk and their metric counting people saying, okay, what's the budget for next year? And then they've got to go ahead and get that all signed off on by everybody so that essentially they can push it forward, keep doing what they're doing, and make things happen. Otherwise, no payroll, no money's going to be out, going out the door. It's just going to fail. Same thing with Congress. Congress sits back and says, well, we've got to pass how much we're going to actually put aside for this agency and this agency and this agency and this agency and this agency. Now, as you know, the government, our wonderful senators and House reps, they have a problem with how they do things. We don't actually have enough money to pay off our interest payments to all the loans that we've taken out as a country. So we've now gotten to this weird, shitty spot where basically we unfortunately can't afford to pay back the interest payments, have massive debt on our shoulders, and we've got to raise the budget to give to all these different agencies, because inflation has been out of control for the past couple of years. Now, you can blame the inflation on, these corporations getting greedy. You can certainly blame it on the mishandling by the Capitol, the Hill, when it comes to oil and basically fuel and fuel reserves. And then you have other options, which is just, the post-COVID, it is what it is. There were a lot of things that should have been done differently. That's the bottom line. They should have controlled corporation capitalist interests. They should have heavy leaned on, oil manufacturers and things like that to push as much out as possible. But they didn't do that. They canceled leases, they canceled pipelines, and they, frankly, just to put it as simple as possible, they went with a massive green initiative, which is going to bankrupt the country. That's what it's going to do. So the irony is that there hasn't been great leadership on this whole dynamic situation, which is ironically put fuel on the fire of our economy being in a bad spot. So the Republicans are pushing this agenda of having more restrictions when it comes to essentially, those things where we're not spending as much here and spending as much there, etc. I'm going to take that life a little bit. There you go. And the problem the Democrats run into is they just want to spend. And that's because that's what Democrats do. That's never been outside the realm of what Democrats do. They always do that. Their idea is tax wherever they can get the money and spend. That's what Democrats do. So the point is, keep in mind, Democrats, they're splitting up into these different things. There's like, middle Democrats. Well, no, there's the right middle Democrats, and there's the, liberals, and then there's the woke. And so you've got these different categories that all want different things now. So what's happening is the hardline Republicans are creating this standstill situation where they say we have to cut how much money we're spending. Now, as a result of all of this, none of it matters for the Social Security Administration because they are allowed to continue to receive funding from the trust funds and fund any other agency they need to stay open to continue to pay their retirement checks, their disability checks, etc. So bottom line is they're not shutting down. The only way that they could realistically shut down going forward is essentially when the trust funds run out or run super duper low, and then as them using those trust funds, they ultimately run out of money quickly. Because remember, to run these agencies, it's extremely expensive. Now, as you know, 9 years down the line, Medicare runs out. As you know, 10 years down the line, retirement runs out. So 9 to 10 years down the line, you could actually see a video where the Social Security Administration is shutting down. Whether they're an essential group, whether they're essential employees, whether they're essential anything, at that point won't matter, because it just won't be money to keep it going. That's the reality. If they're not putting the money in the accounts for the SSA to pay the employees, it will shut down. Now, when this happens 9 to 10 years down the line, okay, what you'll see is a graduated reduction of workers. You'll still see people showing up for like 2 or 3 months without money. And hopefully the government would be able to fix their problem and turn the money back on within that 2 or 3 months. But realistically, unfortunately, these politicians are just getting more and more on each side of the aisle and unwilling to work with each other. Okay, so I have an article here that actually got something wrong. It's from NBC, and they really do. What happens to Social Security payments if the government shuts down? I'll just go through this real quick so that you guys can hear what they had to say, and then I'll show you what they got wrong. If the federal government shuts down Sunday, numerous publicity-funded agencies will stop work and their employees won't be paid, but Social Security checks will still go out. Now, what they said here is correct. Many of the other agencies that are out there will basically say to their employees, hey, just keep working. We'll hit you back a couple weeks down the line. We'll hit you back a couple months down the line, depending on when the politicians figure this out. And so what the politicians are trying to fix right now is they're trying to create what's called a continuing resolution, which is like a mini deal. And if they get a mini deal together, they can go ahead and continue to fund the budget for the government to be open until they hash out all the big stuff, all the problems. But remember, we're 2023 coming up on 2024, the election year, which means that the Republicans are going to want to make Biden look as bad as possible. And no matter what happens with the government not working like it's supposed to, even though Social Security, the SSA will work like it's supposed to, other, particular groups, agencies, if you will, and not having access to those resources that people are accustomed to, and then all those in government, employees out there, no matter what, politicians look really bad if they're not able to go ahead and do their jobs. And the politicians are going to get super pissed. And then you're going to see this massive online, the Democrats are crying, the Republicans are crying, kind of like, who's the bad guy battle that happens. You guys have seen it before. They always do this thing. They go through this whole like back and forth situation. Let's keep reading here. Social Security is considered a mandatory program and isn't funded by the shorter term appropriation bills passed by Congress and signed by the president. That means its operations and funding don't stop when the government shuts down. That's important for a large proportion of Americans, as about 67 million people receive monthly Social Security benefits, according to the Social Security Administration. Those benefits go primarily to retirees, but also to people with disabilities as well as dependents of deceased beneficiaries. Medicare and Veterans Affairs benefits will also continue to be distributed during a shutdown. Okay. Now you might be sitting there wondering, okay, cool. So what other groups are on this, like, money's still going to be there? Even when they run out of money, they're doing this whole like, well, we don't have enough money. Let's argue over the budget, blah, blah, blah. Which things are likely to continue? So the first thing Congress will likely pass in this situation is a bill to become law that says the funding for, natural disasters or disaster situations will still be available. So the first thing they'll do is they'll just be like, look, we're going to carve out this and they're going to get that. They're good to go. Keep going. The other thing that they're really talking about heavily that will probably pass through Congress is a bill that will still allow the funding to go to Ukraine. So what's ironic about this is that the two things that they're really worried about with Congress, because they know Social Security benefits are covered and VA benefits are covered, is essentially a natural disaster or some sort of disaster funding for this country because they would be prime time. Like if they cut off funding for fixing a disaster, it would be prime time for like a nuclear bomb to go off, and it'd be a horrible thing in the United States, and then they wouldn't have funding to deal with it. So it would be one of those situations where they're worried about that. But then what I think might actually pass at the same time or potentially before it is a bill for Ukraine to be fully funded with the funding that they agreed to pay throughout this process, which shows you the level of importance that Ukraine is to all these politicians. Do they have money invested in Ukraine? What happened there? Why are they so invested? I don't get it. Why are we paying many, many times more than every other nation when it comes to Ukraine? None of this makes sense anymore. So the weird thing to me is that Ukraine receives funding and military gear, military strategy, military help from us. And then as a result of that, Russia responded a couple of days ago that they're not really just fighting with Ukraine, they're fighting directly with the United States, which means World War III. That is World War III when you have Russia and the US going at it. So what's interesting about this is that the US is paying the pensions and the Social Security benefits of the Ukraine citizens, but they're not willing to find funding for our own programs such as retirement, disability, and Medicare. So what's weird is that with the current administration, and that's both the Republicans and the Democrats, they are willing to essentially fund Ukraine over the American people when it comes to the disabled and the retired. That is mind-blowing. Like, to show the effect of where our interests are at, they would rather have a global military force playing its role of monopoly over the earth than fund their own people who pay for everything. That's weird. That's not a good sign. Then on top of that, you have to look at this whole situation and ask yourself, where are we with a fix for Social Security benefits? There's none on the table. None are going to pop up in Congress. There's no budget from Biden. Whatever Biden promises over the next couple of months, nothing. There's no budget for it in 2024. There's none. There's no budget for it. The budget isn't there to fix this program. So now let's keep reading here. That's important for a large proportion of Americans, blah, blah, blah. The federal government will shut down at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Sunday if Congress does not pass a bill to provide more funding. The GOP has a narrow majority in the House, and a group of hardline conservatives is holding out from the rest of Republicans and demanding deep cuts in government spending. President Joe Biden and the Democrats who control the Senate oppose those cuts. In the event of a shutdown, non-essential actions would stop and 4 million federal employees would not receive paychecks. So if you're ever wondering who is the biggest employer of businesses in America, it would be obviously the United States government, buying through both the direct employees and all the auxiliary third-party employees that they use. Some, including members of the military, would work without pay and would receive back pay later on after a new funding bill is passed and signed into law. Let me read that again so that you catch that, okay? Because this is important to our safety. Like the people who are considered after Ukraine, the people who tend to come after the legislation for immigrants coming into this country from the southern border. Let me read it again. Some, including members of the military, would work without pay and would receive back pay later on after a new funding bill is passed and signed into law. How cool do you feel with what would you put it? I mean, it's negligence. Is it gross negligence on behalf of the congressional leaders or all the senators and the House reps to not be able to fund our military members, our literal armed forces sections? Remember, some sections of those, no matter what, get funding, but isn't that a little weird that we would actually pull back from funding portions of our military? Kind of odd, kind of weird. To me, that would be gross negligence on behalf of, the congressional leaders and also the direct descent down the line to all senators and House reps. I mean, to me, maybe that's the thing. Maybe I could file suit against the government. Literally, just file suit against all senators and House reps, name each one and say, you guys screwed up because we have been put in, potential harmful situation. Although we have to show harm. We have to actually show harm that something happened and we were harmed as a result of it. So something to think about. Other federal employees would be furloughed and would not report to work. And a shutdown would stop many other federal programs and services. Biden administration said Monday that the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC, will stop operating 1 or 2 days into a shutdown. Although Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack said some states might be able to keep their programs running a bit longer than that. So essentially funding the women who have kids that are like impoverished, basically that's not a priority. Immigrants getting housing in this country that come here illegally, right? But then are allowed to go through the process and be basically put. And some people will say you shouldn't say the word illegal. They are here illegally, right? That doesn't mean they're not great people. They could be amazing people. There are some immigrants coming in this country that are like great with their hands. They can make amazing things. They know math. They know science. They know how to build a house. Amazing. But they are here illegally. Then they grab them, then they certify them, and they give them housing. Some of them get 7 years of SSI plus 2-year opt-in plus. So what's weird is that immigrants would likely be fed through this, but not the children of impoverished mothers. And, not all military personnel. And, many, many other 4 million individuals that work for the government. What the F, WIC is a program, you know what it is, intended to help low-income pregnant and postpartum women, as well as children under age 5, access healthier food. According to the Agricultural Department, more than 6 million people receive WIC benefits each month in 2022, including about 39% of all U.S. infants. A long shutdown could harm the economy as well. The longest shutdown lasted for 35 days, from December 22, 2018 to January 25th, 2019, and the Congressional Budget Office estimated that it cost the U.S. economy and at least $11 billion directly, with indirect costs that were harder to quantify. All right, let's go to the very end of this thing because it had an error in here. Right here. Government shutdown would not be confused with the debt ceiling standoff. The U.S. reached its borrowing limit, called the debt ceiling, earlier this year. The standoff could have prevented Social Security checks from going out had it lasted long enough, but after a protracted impasse, congressional Republicans and Democrats agreed on a deal to prevent it. That statement from NBC is wrong. That's not correct. This is from Marley J. Marley J is a business news reporter for NBC News Digital. It's an incorrect statement. She got the other stuff right. That is an incorrect statement. The SSA had a division go ahead and do a giant review of the law. And it's very broad. It's unfortunately way too broad. But what they found was that the Social Security Administration can stay open, and any other agencies that they need to stay open so long as they're required to pay out their checks. Retirement benefits, Social Security benefits, disability benefits, Joe, they have to stay open. What they didn't put in this article, which would have been really cool, is if they talked about the chart of when retirement benefits and Medicare benefits are going to run out for their trust funds. Because when that happens, those trust funds, like the back bag of money that they could jingle and pay for these agencies to stay open with, when that happens, there's no more safety. There's a government shutdown and it lasts long enough, you won't get your check. Because they won't have the safety net there, because they won't have the other agencies open to receive the taxes, do the accounting, all that stuff. And that's a scary time. And that's 10 years away. Like, that's crazy when you think about it. Like, it's just like, when people are like, hey, I'm retired. This is the only check I get. This is what I have to live on. Same thing with the WIC benefits. It's like, young children who are impoverished, don't worry. You'll only starve until we figure this out. Great people who have built this nation who are retired, don't worry. 10 years, the trust funds have run out for the most part. We may not be able to pay you your checks because the other agencies required to process everything might not be open. So it's scary. It's very scary. But I just wanted to go ahead. I put in a thing on this day, it'll close. It will be not on October 1st. It could potentially be 10 years down the line from now. They could still draw money from the SSDI trust fund, but it could potentially be 10, 12, 13 years down the line. Sure. When the trust funds run out, they're going to run into a big problem there. Absolutely. But it will not be on October 1st. Okay. So I just hope you guys understand that. I'm going to be doing the next video. Let me tell you what the title is going to be about specifically. Okay, here it is. So, bottom line, we're going to talk about work and Social Security disability benefits. And one of the big things that people get wrong is that they assume when you go for Social Security disability benefits that you should definitively never work. And that's not actually true. I'm going to tell you what the caveat is, what the little gray area is, so that you can do a better job going forward when you're obtaining your Social Security benefits. Catch me at the next video and we will go from there. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for partaking in this fun thing and hanging out with me. I will be back in 10 minutes, and my vacation is almost coming to an end. It is Tuesday. My vacation goes until basically Sunday, and then I will be back in Florida having fun, sitting at a desk and working. Now, I will say this. I had to work most of this vacation answering calls and writing up documents, legal documents. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I can tell you this. I was trying to rely on two people to cover additional calls and legal work while I was gone. Both of them bailed on me at the last moment. There's no way I'm doing this next year. Like next year, I'm going to actually have a real vacation. I haven't had a real vacation since I was in law school. I haven't had a real vacation over the 10 years I've been running this firm. And I can tell you this because tomorrow, September 27th, of 2023 will officially be my 10-year I guess reunion, but it's more like a celebration. It'll be my 10-year date when I started this corporation. It officially went into effect and it became a law firm. So tomorrow will be my 10-year anniversary. I'll catch you guys in 10 minutes and have a wonderful, wonderful night. All right, guys. Bye-bye. See you soon and take care of yourself. 10 minutes. I'll be back. All right. Bye-bye.